if it was because it kind of reminded me of the Final Empire series or the Mistborn series. Wow. If it reminded me of the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson, which I had read really heavily. Just can't speak today. Okay. If it was because it reminded me a lot of the Mistborn series, I give up. Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey, and we're about to get very, very nerdy with some disappointments from 2020. So this is the annual video that I do talking about some books that weren't so great this year. I don't ever like doing books that I hated in next year because I usually don't outright hate books. I like certain aspects of them, but there are handfuls of books that are just disappointments for one reason or another. So I thought that I would talk about them today. There's only about 7, I think. Yeah, about 7 I've got on this list, which is saying something considering I read over 150 books this year, and there's still time for more. So, if only 7 were disappointments, I think that's a pretty good win. But don't worry, we will be doing surprises as the next video you will see in a couple of days. So I'm gonna get the negative out of the way, and then we can have the positive in a couple days, and then just continue with end of the year positivity. So let's just get right into some of the books that were just not great. Did I turn into like the rabbit? That's all, folks. Oh no, it's a pig. Gonna get a couple of the controversial ones out of the way first. The first one that was a pretty big disappointment for me was actually A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is the first in her Darker Shade of Magic series. I've never read anything by V.E. Schwab, and I picked this up a couple of months ago. I honestly don't remember when it was, but I expected amazing things from this, and I don't know if it's because I hyped Victoria Schwab's writing so much up in my head, if it's because this series just didn't work for me, if it reminded me a lot of the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson, which I had read relatively close to when I read this book. I'm not sure what it was, but something just didn't click. I didn't feel connected to any of the characters. Nothing that was happening to them had any impact on me. Like, if bad things happened to characters, I was like, cool. Gonna continue doing what I'm doing. If good things happened, I was like, cool. Gonna continue doing what I'm doing. I just didn't have any strong opinions about it. And I don't know if it's because it's the first in a series, so it gets better. I do have all of them. So I am going to continue the series just because I want to find out why people love it so much. If I spaced out when I was listening to this, which is a possibility, I don't know what it was, but I expected great things from this, and it was just okay. Like, I honestly had no deep feelings about it. It was okay. It was middle of the road. Like, I didn't have positive feelings, I didn't have negative feelings, I didn't really have any kind of feeling. I just was glad that it was over. So I liked the idea of this book, and I'm wondering if Victoria Schwab is going to be an author that, like, her ideas sound amazing but her writing doesn't do it for me. I don't know. I'm willing to give a lot of her stuff a try though, just to see how it works, but that one just didn't do it. And then the second, I think, one that would be controversial that I want to get out of the way is actually The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. I believe I read this in October. That sounds right. So this is a series that I've seen all the movies from, so I do know the story behind The Lord of the Rings. And I had read The Hobbit earlier this year. I really want to say it was in like March. I feel like it was part of my like out of my comfort zone TBR that I did then. And I wasn't in love with his writing, but I enjoyed The Hobbit just fine. And so this is much bigger, and I knew this story a lot better, so I was expecting better things from this. And it was so boring. I was bored almost the entire time. I listened to the audiobook by Rob Inglis, and I really do enjoy Rob Inglis as an audiobook narrator. So that wasn't a problem. It was a journey story, and journey stories do not work for me, but I thought because it was The Lord of the Rings, and I knew the story, and like I've had some experience with this world, it would be okay. It just wasn't. So will I continue with the series? Yes, obviously. But I'm not in any hurry to, if that makes sense. I think this is solidified for me that like classic fantasy writing does not work for me. I mean, journey stories don't work for me, so like it was already kind of at a loss, but like The writing didn't do it, and the writing was the biggest part, the biggest letdown for me. So this was a disappointment. The next kind of disappointment was actually one that I read way back in January. I really want to say this was the first book I ever read in 2020, which, disappointment of a year. So like, correlation? Maybe. But that is actually Legendary Ladies by Anne Shin. This is an author who, I've read other things by her. She also has a book out very similar to this, and it is like 50 bad girls throughout history or something, and I enjoyed that. And this one is about 50 goddesses to empower and inspire you, and they're all in like individual like categories. We've got creativity, power, love, protection, reinvention, stuff like that. And so I was expecting great things because I love mythology. I really did enjoy her other book, and she also is the illustrator for this, which is just like, her art is stunning, and like there are people from all over the world, and I thought it would be great because like each section gives you like the origin and then like a description about this specific goddess, and it was so boring. I loved the artwork, and that was my favorite part about this because her artwork is stunning, like I said, but this was just kind of like not telling you about like the actual mythology surrounding these individual goddesses. It was just like, this is the goddess, this is why people like her, this is a little quick fact about her, and we're moving on now. And it was just, it was boring. It was so boring, and I just wanted it to be over. And it's not a big book, especially considering that like some of the things are 2 paragraphs long, some of them are even shorter than that, and like, I just wanted it to be over. I just wanted it to be over. And it was sad because I expected this to be really great. I honestly expected it to be better than the other one because it had to do with mythology, which I love. Didn't do it for me. The next one is the other kind of like mythology book on this list, and that is Greek Legends and Stories by V.M. Seton Williams. This is a book that I've had for literal years. I'm pretty sure I bought this in college from like a Books A Million. That sounds like something that I would do. And it just looked like it'd be really good. It's got a collection of like all of these different Greek stories, and I really, really do enjoy Greek mythology. I think it's fascinating to read about. So I expected a collection of actual stories. This was a collection of spark-noted stories. So this felt like if you were in school and you found out there was reading and there's going to be a test on said reading, and you didn't do it and you forgot, and your friend is trying to help you out by giving you the highlights of said story. That's what this was. It was the spark-noted version of all of these stories. It was so boring. It wasn't written very well either, but I just wanted the actual stories. I wanted to read the actual mythology stories, and this was not it. This was just, it wasn't it. The next one is an odd one because it's in the middle of a series, and that is the Earthsea Cycle, The Farthest Shore. I think the picture is here, but it's the 3rd one in the series. Now, this is a read-along that Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction did, and I wanted to do. I thought it sounded interesting. The books were really, really tiny. It's by Ursula K. Le Guin that I read that one book, The Left Hand of Darkness by, and I didn't love it, but I thought it was the specific way that she had formatted that book. I didn't think it was her writing style, so I wanted to try like a fantasy book by her. And no one really liked the series, but I did actually really enjoy the 2nd book in the series, so I had high hopes that the others were going to be better. And this also had a journey in it, so like maybe I should have realized that, but it was so boring. I did not care a little, like anything about anything that was happening. I honestly finished it to say that I had finished it. Like, this is a book that I probably should have DNF'd, and I just didn't. And I'm not sure why I wasted my time. This was also an audiobook that was by Rob Inglis as well, so like, he's a good audiobook narrator, and he didn't even help me out with this one. I think it had to do with death at one point. Like, I didn't even understand the ending. It just, no, disappointment, because I expected after the 2nd one, oh, it's gonna get better. It was just the 1st one that was okay. No, I hated this one more than the 1st one. Hated is a strong word. I deeply disliked this book. And so, like, very disappointed, especially after reading the 2nd one, which I enjoyed. The next one is actually a graphic novel that I picked up from Hoopla because I needed something. I think I read this during the reading rush, and I was trying to get into mangas, and this is a manga set in Tokyo. Honestly, I don't even know. I blocked it out. And that is the story of Lee. Can't even tell you who it's by. It's here. Did not like this. There was a lot of problematic issues with it, so I will leave my review, or like my vlog that I did of that week, because I definitely go into detail about what's wrong with this book, because there's quite a few things. There's a lot of like family issues that I didn't appreciate. There's a lot of like, the author brings up racism, I think, at one point, and like then just brushes it aside. And so I was like, if you're not going to talk about it, why did you bring it up? Because now people are going to know that you're purposely not talking about it. I don't know. It didn't work for me, and it was not the manga to start off with. And it's not the first manga I've ever read, but I am trying to get more into mangas, and so it like stopped me reading mangas for months, because I was just like, this was a bad one. I've now found a few that I'm excited about, so we're trying to get back into like reading mangas again. But like this one just like cut my like thought process of trying to read more mangas in half. And then I proceeded to read the sequel like a dummy. I don't know. It was a disappointment, because I wanted, like, it sounded like it was going to be great. It sounded like it was going to be a funny rom-com with like a little bit of a more serious topic on top of it, and it was not even close to that. And yeah, so disappointment for sure. And the very last book on this list is The Angel's Game by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is the second in his, like, I don't even know what the series is called, but the first book is The Shadow of the Wind, which I actually read, was it earlier this year? I think it was earlier this year. I read it recently-ish, and I really enjoyed the first one. I thought it was incredible, and so I read this one expecting it to be just as good, and it wasn't. It was a disappointment to me personally, because it felt like the exact same story as the first one, but with different characters. Like, there were some things in it that like hinted at the first book, and it's not the exact same kind of mystery story, because it's about this author who buys a house and then tries to discover what he can about the family that owned it before him, and that gets him into some like dangerous situations. Whereas the first book is kind of the same thing, except for it's a boy trying to figure out why this author that he enjoys works are kind of like disappearing. And so he investigates, and he puts him in some dangerous situations. And then at the end, there was this random like magical realism element that came out of nowhere, and I'm not even sure why it was in there. Like why? And it was also really creepy. So like there was just a lot of things that like I wanted this to be great. I don't know if I just wasn't focused on it. I listened to the audiobook, but the audiobook was by Dan Stevens, and I love him as a narrator. I love him as an actor. I love him. Let's just put that out there. But he's a really good audiobook narrator, and so I expected this to be great. I expected him to be really good in this, and he was. The story just wasn't for me. So I don't think I'm going to continue on with his work and just kind of stick it with The Shadow of the Wind as being good. But yeah, this one I wanted to be great, and it just felt like the exact same story with the different character, and also more weird situations. So those are the books that were pretty big disappointments for me in 2020. Like I said, considering I've read quite a few books, only 7 I think is a win. But I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please let me know down below what maybe is one of your books that was a pretty big disappointment for you when reading in 2020. Let's share the misery together. But I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there as well if you want to follow along on any of those. And I will see you guys for a much happier video in a couple of days. Bye.